The massive space station Nexus 7 floated in the void between three star systems. Its gleaming metal walls stretched for miles in every direction. Inside, the halls buzzed with activity as beings from across the galaxy moved about their daily business. This was the Intergalactic Combat Academy, the most famous training center in known space. Lihanna walked through the main corridor, her small frame barely reaching the shoulders of most other students. Around her, towering aliens chatted in various languages. The Gorvakians stood nearly 10 feet tall, their thick gray skin covering massive muscles. The ethereal wisps floated past, their translucent bodies shimmering like water. Heavily armored Krulon warriors clanked by in their metal suits. Then there were the humans. 5 of them in total among 300 students. They looked tiny and fragile compared to everyone else. Most aliens barely noticed them as they passed. Hana made her way to the combat training hall. The room was enormous, with high ceilings and padded floors. Training equipment lined the walls. In the center stood Instructor Vextar, a Zentaurian with dark green skin and 4 powerful arms. His exoskeleton gleamed under the bright lights. Chitinous plates covered his shoulders and back like natural armor. "Gather around, students," Vextar called out in his deep voice. His yellow eyes swept across the assembled class. "Today we practice close combat techniques." The students formed a circle around him. Hana stood next to her friend Park Jinwoo, another human who had arrived at the academy 6 months ago. Behind them, Kim Sora and Choi Minho completed their small group of Earthborn students. "Combat is about strength," Vextar began, flexing all 4 of his arms. "It is about power and dominance. Some species understand this naturally." His gaze lingered on the larger alien students. Others do not. A few Gorvakians chuckled. The Krulon warriors nodded their approval. Hana noticed how Vextar's eyes kept drifting toward the human students with obvious disdain. "The Zentaurian fighting style has dominated battlefields for centuries," the instructor continued. "We are strong. We are fast. We are superior." He walked around the circle, stopping in front of different students. "Each of you comes from worlds that have shaped your abilities. The Gorvakians from high-gravity planets, the Krulons from war-torn systems, the Wisps from energy-rich nebulae." He paused when he reached the humans. "And then we have the Deathworlders." The way he said the word made it sound like an insult. "Beings from a planet so hostile that everything tries to kill them. You might think this makes them strong." Vexitar shook his head slowly. "It does not. It makes them desperate. It makes them wild and unpredictable. They survived through luck and numbers, not skill or strength." Jinwoo's jaw tightened beside Hana. She could feel the tension radiating from her friend. Sora and Minho remained perfectly still, but she knew they were listening to every word. "Humans believe they are special because they come from a dangerous world," Vextar continued. "They think this gives them some advantage in combat. This is a foolish belief. True warriors are made through training and natural superiority, not by running from predators." Several alien students laughed. A tall Gorvakian named Thorak spoke up. "Instructor, are humans really that weak? They look so small." Vextar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "An excellent question. Let me demonstrate the difference between real strength and Deathworld desperation." The instructor's 4 eyes scanned the human students before settling on Hana. "You. Step forward." Hana felt every gaze in the room turn toward her. She was 19 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall, and weighed barely 120 pounds. Next to Vexitar's imposing 7-foot frame, she looked like a child. "Do not be afraid," Vextar said mockingly. "I will be gentle with the fragile Deathworlder." Hana stepped into the center of the circle. She kept her expression calm and her hands relaxed at her sides. Around the room, alien students whispered among themselves. Some sounded excited. Others seemed to pity her. "You see, class, how she tries to appear brave?" Vextar circled around Hana like a predator. "This is typical human behavior. They pretend to be fearless to hide their weakness." He stopped in front of her. "Tell the class about your homeworld, human. Tell them about Earth." Hana looked up at him steadily. Earth is a world where many species compete for survival. The environment changes frequently. Weather can be dangerous. Many animals are predators. Exactly, Vextar exclaimed. A world of chaos and fear. No wonder humans develop such primitive responses to danger. He looked around at the other students. They learned to run, to hide, to use tools because they were too weak to fight properly. The instructor moved closer to Hana. Humans think their planet made them tough, but toughness is not the same as strength. A rock is tough, but I can break it easily. He flexed one of his forearms. The muscles bulged beneath his chitinous plating. A single Zentaurian can lift 3 times what your strongest human can manage. Our reflexes are faster. Our natural armor protects us. We are evolution's perfection. Hana said nothing. She simply stood there, breathing steadily, watching Vextar with calm brown eyes. Look at her, the instructor said to the class. So small, so fragile. This is what Deathworld evolution produces. Beings who think survival makes them warriors. Some of the alien students shifted uncomfortably. Even they could see that Vextar was being unnecessarily cruel. But Academy protocol was clear. Students could not interfere with instructor demonstrations. Jinwoo's hands clenched into fists. Beside him, Sora's analytical mind was already calculating trajectories and possibilities. Minho's training in weapons made him notice how Hana's weight was distributed, how her muscles remained loose but ready. Perhaps, Vextar said slowly, it is time for a practical demonstration. Sometimes words are not enough to teach proper respect. The room fell silent. Even the background hum of the station's systems seemed to fade away. Hana continued to stand perfectly still, but something subtle changed in her posture. Her breathing became deeper and more controlled. Vextar raised one of his 4 hands. Do not worry, little Deathworlder. This will only hurt for a moment. Consider it a valuable lesson about the difference between real strength and survival instincts. The alien students watched in fascination and growing unease. They had expected a simple demonstration, not this public humiliation, but none of them truly understood what they were about to witness. In the vastness of space, Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet so hostile that most galactic species considered it uninhabitable. What they did not understand was why the humans who survived such a world always looked so calm and controlled. They were about to find out. Vextar's hand hung in the air above Hana's head. The training hall had become so quiet that everyone could hear the soft hum of the air recycling systems. 300 students from dozens of different worlds watched, as their instructor prepared to strike. A human girl who barely came up to his chest. This demonstration will show you the proper way to establish dominance, Vextar announced to the class. His forearms moved in slow, practiced motions as he positioned himself. Real combat is not about fairness. It is about showing your opponent that resistance is useless. Hana remained perfectly still. Her dark eyes tracked Vextar's movements without showing fear or anger. Around the circle, her human classmates watched with growing tension. Jinwoo's breathing had become shallow and quick. Sora's hands were trembling slightly as her mind raced through possible outcomes. Minho had unconsciously shifted his weight to the balls of his feet. The alien students, however, seemed fascinated by what they saw as an educational display. A young Gorvakian named Brelak whispered to his friend, I have never seen a human in actual combat before. There will not be much to see, replied Corvex, a heavily armored Krulon. Look how small she is compared to Instructor Vextar. Vextar heard their conversation and smiled his sharp-toothed grin. Precisely the point I am making. Size and strength matter in real combat. Everything else is just primitive flailing. He began to circle around Hana again, his forearms moving in different patterns. Humans developed what they call martial arts on their death world. They think these techniques make up for their physical weakness. But watch closely, class. See how useless such things are against true power. The instructor stopped directly in front of Hana. Your species fascinates the galaxy, little human. They say Earth is so dangerous that most beings would die within hours of landing there. Storms that can level cities. Earthquakes that split continents. Animals that hunt in packs and can track prey for days. His voice became mocking. And yet here you stand, so calm and quiet. Is this the legendary human survival instinct? Standing still like prey hoping the predator will lose interest, Hana finally spoke, her voice steady and clear. I am listening to your instructions, sir. That is what students do. How respectful, Vextar laughed. Even now you show proper deference to your superiors. At least Deathworlders understand hierarchy when they see it. He gestured to the watching students. See how she acknowledges my authority? This is the natural order. Strong species lead, weak species follow. It has always been this way. The instructor's tone became more aggressive. But perhaps you do not truly understand your place yet. Perhaps growing up fighting wild animals made you think you could fight anything. Is that it, human? Do you think your little death world made you special? Hana's expression did not change. I think every world teaches different lessons, sir. Different lessons. Vextar's voice rose. What lessons could a chaotic world like Earth possibly teach that would matter here? How to run from danger, how to hide in caves, how to use primitive tools because you are too weak to fight with your bare hands. Several alien students began to look uncomfortable. Even by academy standards, this was becoming excessive. But Vextar was a senior instructor with decades of experience. None of them dared to question his methods. Perhaps, the instructor continued, you need a more direct demonstration of the difference between us. Without warning, he moved. His primary right arm swept across in a calculated strike aimed at Hana's face. It was not his full strength. That would have killed her instantly. But it was more than enough to send a clear message about power and dominance. The blow connected with a sharp crack that echoed through the training hall. Hana's head snapped to the side from the impact. Her feet left the ground for a moment before she crashed down onto the padded mat several feet away. The force of the strike had been perfectly calculated, enough to hurt and humiliate, but not enough to cause permanent damage, or so Vextar thought. There, the instructor said with satisfaction. That is the reality of combat. Strength defeats technique. Power overcomes training. Natural superiority conquers Deathworld desperation. The alien students stared in shocked silence. Some looked pleased to see human arrogance put in its place. Others seemed disturbed by the unnecessary violence. A few of the younger ones appeared genuinely upset. Jinwoo started forward instinctively, but Sora grabbed his arm. Academy protocol was absolute. Students could not interfere with instructor demonstrations under any circumstances. Violation meant immediate expulsion. Minho's face had gone completely pale. All three humans knew something that the aliens did not understand. They had grown up on Earth. They had seen what happened when humans were pushed past certain limits. Hana lay on the mat for several seconds, not moving. A thin line of blood appeared at the corner of her mouth where Vextar's chitinous knuckles had split her lip. Her long black hair had fallen across her face, hiding her expression. You see? Vextar addressed the class while pointing at the motionless figure. This is what happens when Deathworld bravado meets real strength. The human is finished after a single proper blow. He turned away from Hana, confident the demonstration was over. Let this be a lesson to all of you. Respect is not given freely. It must be earned through superior ability and enforced through decisive action. Behind him, Hana began to move. She pushed herself up slowly, wiping blood from her mouth with the back of her hand. When she stood and turned to face Vextar, something had changed. The calm, respectful student was gone. In her place stood something else entirely. Her brown eyes had become completely cold and focused. Her breathing had shifted to a deep, controlled rhythm. Every muscle in her small frame was now perfectly balanced and ready. The change was so dramatic that several aliens actually stepped backward without understanding why. Jinwoo recognized the signs immediately. He had seen this transformation before during their training on Earth. Sora's analytical mind cataloged every detail of Hana's new posture and expression. Minho realized with growing dread that their friend had just crossed a line that very few humans ever came back from. Vextar was still talking to the class, unaware that the small human behind him had become something completely different. True warriors know when they are beaten, he was saying. They accept their defeat with dignity and learn from their superiors. Hana took one step forward, then another. The human students held their breath. Around them, alien classmates began to notice that something was wrong. The air in the training hall seemed to have become heavier, more dangerous. On Earth, there was an old saying, poke the bear and see what happens. The aliens at the Intergalactic Combat Academy were about to learn exactly what that meant. 30 seconds. That was all the time it would take for everything to change. Time seemed to slow down as Hana moved across the training mat. Her steps were silent despite the solid floor beneath her feet. Every movement was controlled and precise, like a predator stalking through tall grass. Vextar was still speaking to the class when she reached him. "The lesson here is simple," he was saying. "Strength is the only currency that matters in real combat. Everything else is just—" His words stopped abruptly as he felt something behind him. Some instinct older than civilization told him he was no longer safe. He began to turn around. Hana struck first. Her small fist connected with a nerve cluster just below Vexitar's primary left shoulder. The impact was perfectly placed, hitting the exact spot where his chitinous armor had a microscopic gap. His entire left arm went numb instantly, dropping uselessly to his side. "What?" Vextar started to say, but Hana was already moving. She ducked under his reaching right arms and drove her elbow upward into his lower ribs. The blow was calculated with surgical precision. It cracked 2 of his chitinous plates and sent shockwaves through his nervous system. Vextar staggered backward, his yellow eyes wide with confusion and pain. This was not possible. Humans were weak. They were fragile. They could not hurt a Zentaurian warrior. But Hana was not fighting like the humans he had studied in Academy records. She was not wild or desperate. Every attack was planned 3 moves ahead. Every strike targeted specific weaknesses that she somehow knew about, without ever having fought a Zentaurian before. She grabbed his remaining functional left arm and twisted it in a direction that Zentaurian joints were not meant to bend. Vextar screamed as ligaments stretched and bones shifted. The sound echoed through the training hall like a siren. The alien students watched in stunned silence. This could not be happening. Their instructor was one of the Academy's best fighters. He had trained for decades. He had natural armor and superior strength. But the small human girl was taking him apart piece by piece. Hana spun around his larger body, using his own momentum against him. When he tried to grab her with his remaining good arms, she was already somewhere else. When he tried to strike her, she redirected his force into the ground or back at himself. 15 seconds had passed. Vexitar attempted a desperate charge, hoping to use his size and weight to overwhelm her. Hana stepped aside at the last possible moment and swept his legs. As he fell forward, she grabbed the back of his head and guided his face directly into the padded floor. The impact was loud enough to be heard in the back of the training hall. When Vextar tried to get up, Hana was already behind him. She wrapped her arm around his thick neck in what humans called a chokehold. But this was not the simple technique taught in basic combat classes. This was something far more sophisticated. She applied pressure to exactly the right points on his neck. Blood flow to his brain began to slow down immediately. His vision started to blur at the edges. His forearms flailed weakly as his body began to shut down. 25 seconds. "Please," Vextar managed to whisper. The word came out as a desperate gasp. Hana's cold brown eyes looked down at him. For a moment, the alien students thought she might actually kill their instructor right there in front of everyone. The calculating expression on her face suggested she was deciding whether he was worth keeping alive. Then something shifted in her eyes. The predator retreated just slightly, replaced by the disciplined student they had known before. But the change was controlled, not accidental. She had chosen mercy, not weakness. She released the chokehold and stepped away from Vextar's collapsed form. 30 seconds exactly. The training hall was completely silent, except for the sound of Vextar's ragged breathing. He lay on the mat, his chitinous armor cracked in multiple places, his forearms sprawled uselessly around him, blood seeped from where his natural plating had been damaged. Hana stood over him, breathing normally, her clothes barely wrinkled from the encounter. She looked around at the stunned alien faces staring back at her. "Is the demonstration over, sir?" she asked quietly. The automatic medical sensors built into the training hall had been recording everything. Now they began to flash red warning lights as they detected Vextar's condition. Emergency alerts started sounding throughout the academy. Medical staff came running into the hall within minutes. Dr. Yoon Tae-hyun, the academy's human physician, led the team. He took one look at Vexitar's condition and immediately began directing the alien medics. Spinal compression at 3 points, he called out while running a scanner over the instructor's body. Severe nerve damage to the left side. Multiple hairline fractures in the exoskeleton. Signs of cerebral oxygen deprivation. The alien medics looked confused. "How is this possible?" one of them asked. "What could cause such specific damage patterns, Doctor?" Yoon glanced at Hana, who was standing quietly to one side. "Precise application of force to vulnerable points," he said simply. "Every strike was calculated to cause maximum incapacitation with minimal permanent damage." They loaded Vextar onto a medical transport and rushed him to the Academy's hospital wing. As they left, the training hall remained frozen in shocked silence. Slowly, the alien students began to look at Hana with new eyes. She was still the same small human girl who had walked into the hall an hour ago, but now they understood that her size meant nothing. Her quiet demeanor had hidden something far more dangerous than any of them had imagined. Brilak, the young Gorvakian, was the first to speak. How did she know where to hit him? His friend Korvex, the armored Krulon, shook his head slowly. "I have studied Zentorian anatomy for years. I did not know those pressure points existed." Near the back of the group, Jinwoo finally exhaled the breath he had been holding for 30 seconds. Sora was staring at her friend with a mixture of admiration and concern. Minho just nodded slowly, as if he had expected exactly this outcome. An older ethereal wisp named Nexiel floated closer to the humans. "That was not random violence," it said in its musical voice. "Every movement had purpose. Every strike had meaning. How is this possible?" Sora looked up at the floating alien. "Earth taught us that every second counts," she said quietly. "When everything on your world is trying to kill you, you learn to end fights quickly. But the control," Nexiel pressed. "The precision. She could have killed him dozens of times but chose not to. This requires incredible mental discipline." Jinwoo nodded. "That is what makes humans dangerous. We do not fight because we want to. We fight because we have to. And when we have to fight, we do it right." Around the training hall, 300 alien students began to understand that everything they thought they knew about humans was wrong. The small, quiet beings from the distant Deathworld were not weak survivors clinging to life through luck and desperation. They were apex predators who had learned to hide their true nature behind calm smiles and respectful words, and one of them had just proved it in exactly 30 seconds. The Academy's medical bay buzzed with activity as alien doctors worked frantically over Vextar's unconscious form. Advanced scanners hummed and beeped while displaying data that none of them had ever seen before. The Zentorian instructor lay perfectly still on the medical table, his breathing shallow and irregular. Dr. Yoon Tae-hyun stood beside the primary medical console, watching the readouts with professional interest. Around him, Gorvakian and Krulon medics struggled to understand what they were seeing. "This does not make sense," muttered Dr. Vex Neal, a senior Gorvakian physician with decades of experience. "The damage patterns are too precise, too controlled. It is as if someone took apart a complex machine with perfect knowledge of its construction." Dr. Yoon nodded thoughtfully. "That is exactly what happened. But how?" Dr. Vex Neal's four eyes focused on the human doctor. "Your species has never fought Zentorians before. We have no record of humans studying our anatomy in detail. How could that girl know exactly where to strike?" The human doctor pulled up a holographic display showing Vextar's injuries. Red markers indicated each point where Hana had attacked. The pattern was incredible. Every strike had been placed with surgical precision to cause maximum incapacitation while avoiding permanent damage. "Look at these impact points," Dr. Yoon said, highlighting each marker. Nerve clusters, joint vulnerabilities, pressure points that cause temporary paralysis. She identified and exploited 17 different anatomical weaknesses in the span of 30 seconds. A Krulon medic named Dr. Korath examined the display more closely. 17? I count only 12 major impacts. The other 5 were feints and redirections, Dr. Yoon explained. Movements designed to control his responses and guide him into positions where the real attacks would be most effective. She was not just fighting him, she was manipulating the entire encounter. Dr. Vexneal shook his massive head. This level of tactical analysis would require years of study. Decades of combat experience. She is barely more than a juvenile by any species standards. That is what makes humans unique, Dr. Yoon said quietly. We do not need years of study to understand how to hurt something. We see the patterns automatically. He gestured to another display showing brain activity scans from the training hall's surveillance systems. These readings were taken during the fight. Look at her neural activity in the moments before she attacked. The alien doctors stared at the brain scan in amazement. Instead of the chaotic neural firing they expected to see during combat, Hana's brain had shown intense but controlled activity in very specific regions. Incredible, whispered Dr. Korath. Her threat assessment centers were operating at maximum efficiency. Her spatial awareness was enhanced beyond normal parameters. And look at this. Her empathy centers were completely suppressed. Dr. Yoon highlighted different areas of the scan. When humans enter what we call combat mode, our brains fundamentally rewire themselves. Emotional responses shut down. Analytical thinking accelerates. Pain sensitivity decreases. We become living weapons, but she stopped, Dr. Vexneal pointed out. She could have killed him easily, but she chose not to. How does a being in this weapon state make moral decisions? The human doctor smiled grimly. That is what makes us truly dangerous. We do not lose control when we fight, we gain it. Every human who survives to adulthood on Earth has learned to walk the line between necessary violence and excessive force. He pulled up security footage from the training hall, slowing it down to show each moment of the encounter. Watch carefully. She had 7 different opportunities to deliver fatal blows. Each time she chose a non-lethal alternative that required more skill and precision. The alien doctors watched in stunned silence as the footage revealed the truth. Hana had not been fighting in a rage or desperate frenzy. Every movement had been calculated. Every decision had been moral as well as tactical. She was protecting him, Dr. Korath realized. Even while she was defeating him, she was making sure he would survive. Exactly, Dr. Yoon confirmed. This is standard human combat methodology. We fight to end threats quickly and efficiently, but we preserve the option for mercy whenever possible. It is harder to incapacitate than to kill, but humans always choose the harder path when lives are at stake. Dr. Vexneal looked down at Vextar's still form. Will he recover fully? Yes, Dr. Yoon said. She was very careful about that. No permanent damage to vital systems. The nerve issues will heal completely within a few weeks. Even the psychological trauma was minimized. Psychological trauma? Dr. Korath asked. Dr. Yoon's expression became more serious. Being defeated so completely by someone you considered inferior changes how you see the universe. Vextar will need time to process what happened to him. In another part of the academy, word of the incident was spreading rapidly. Students gathered in small groups discussing what they had witnessed. The footage from the training hall was being analyzed by tactical instructors and combat specialists. Academy Commandant Zorthak, a massive Krulon with decades of military experience, watched the recording for the 15th time. Beside him stood Senior Instructor Valmir, a respected Gorvakian warrior. I have seen thousands of combat encounters, Zorthak said slowly. I have never witnessed anything like this. The level of control she displayed is beyond what our best graduates achieve after years of training. Valmir nodded agreement. And she is still in her first year at the academy. If this is baseline human capability, what are they like with proper training? The commandant paused the footage at the moment when Hana had Vextar in the chokehold. Her expression was completely calm and focused. Look at her face. No anger, no fear. Just cold calculation. She was deciding whether to let him live or die. The fact that she chose life is significant, Valmir observed. A truly dangerous predator would have simply killed him and moved on. But she stopped herself. That level of self-control is remarkable. Zorthak leaned back in his chair. We need to review our entire approach to human students. They are not the desperate survivors we thought they were. They are something far more complex. Meanwhile, in the student dormitories, conversations were happening that would change everything. Alien students who had dismissed humans as weak and primitive were now looking at them with new respect and wariness. Brelak found Jinwoo in the common area and approached carefully. Your friend, he said hesitantly. Is she representative of human capabilities? Jinwoo looked up from the book he was reading. Hana? She is fairly typical for someone from Earth's urban areas. Rural humans tend to be even more capable. The young Gorvakian's eyes widened. More capable? Different skills? Sora interjected, joining the conversation. Hana grew up in a city where the biggest threats were other humans and urban predators. Someone from the wilderness would have different but equally developed abilities. Minho nodded from across the room. Earth has many different environments. Each one produces humans with specialized survival skills. What you saw today was just one example. The alien students began to understand that they had been looking at humans completely wrong. These were not weak beings who had barely survived their harsh world. They were the products of a planet that had tested them in every possible way and forged them into something unique in the galaxy. As news of the incident reached the Academy's administration, committees were formed to study the implications. Human students were quietly moved from the developmental track to the Advanced Combat Specialist program. And in the medical bay, Vextar slowly began to wake up, about to discover that his entire understanding of strength and weakness had been shattered by a 19-year-old girl from a distant blue world. 3 weeks after the incident in the training hall, the Intergalactic Combat Academy looked exactly the same but felt completely different. The gleaming corridors still bustled with alien students, but now conversation stopped when humans walked by. Respectful nods replaced dismissive glances. Fear mixed with admiration in countless alien eyes. Vextar sat in his private quarters, staring out at the stars through his window. His physical injuries had healed completely, just as Dr. Yoon had promised. The cracks in his exoskeleton were gone. His nerve damage had been repaired. His strength had returned to normal levels, but everything else had changed. The Zentorian instructor touched the spot on his neck where Hana had applied the chokehold. He could still remember the feeling of consciousness slipping away, of being completely helpless in the hands of someone a third his size. The memory sent shivers through his armored body. A soft chime indicated someone was at his door. "Enter," he called out. Hana stepped into the room, moving with the same quiet grace that had once seemed insignificant but now commanded attention. She carried a small package wrapped in simple paper. "Instructor Vextar," she said formally, bowing slightly. "I wanted to check on your recovery." Vextar studied her carefully. In the 3 weeks since their encounter, he had thought about her constantly. Academy records showed she was an above-average student, intelligent, dedicated, but not exceptional by galactic standards. Nothing in her file suggested she was capable of what she had done to him. "I am well," he replied slowly. "The medical staff says there will be no lasting effects." Hana nodded. "I am glad to hear that. I was concerned about the force of some of my strikes." The casual way she discussed nearly killing him was unsettling. Not because she seemed proud of it, but because she seemed genuinely worried about his well-being. How could someone be so dangerous and so caring at the same time? "Why did you come here?" Vextar asked. Hana placed the small package on his desk. "I brought you something from Earth. A gift to apologize for the unpleasantness." Vexitar unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a small wooden carving of a tree, intricate and beautiful. The wood was dark and smooth, polished to a warm shine. "It is made from oak," Hana explained, "a tree that grows on my home world. They can live for hundreds of years and survive almost any kind of damage. Fire, drought, storms, disease. They endure everything and keep growing." The Zentorian turned the carving over in his 4 hands. It was surprisingly heavy for its size. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because I think you understand now," Hana said quietly. "What it means to survive something that should have broken you." Vextar looked up at her sharply. "You think what happened between us was somehow beneficial to me?" "I think," Hana said carefully, "that you learned something important about making assumptions. And I think that learning, even when it is painful, makes us stronger." She moved toward the door, then paused. "I also want you to know that I did not enjoy what happened. I do not like hurting people even when they hurt me first." "Then why did you do it?" Vextar asked. Hana was quiet for a long moment. "Because you needed to understand that strength comes in many forms. And because letting you continue to believe humans were weak would have been dangerous for everyone." After she left, Vextar sat holding the wooden carving for a long time. Slowly, he began to understand what she meant. In the weeks that followed, changes rippled through every level of the academy. Human students found themselves partnered with aliens who actually wanted to learn from them. Combat instructors requested human assistance to help demonstrate techniques that required precision over power. Burlak had become close friends with Jinwoo, learning how humans approached tactical problems. The young Gorvakian was amazed by how quickly humans could analyze complex situations and find unexpected solutions. It is like your minds work differently than ours, he told Jinwoo one day as they practiced together. We see obstacles. You see opportunities, Jinwoo smiled. Earth taught us that there is always another way, always another angle to try. Nothing is ever impossible, just difficult. Sora had been recruited by the Academy's Strategic Planning Department. Her ability to process multiple variables simultaneously impressed even the most experienced alien analysts. Her briefings were now required reading for senior staff. Minho found himself training with advanced weapons specialists who wanted to understand human approaches to combat equipment. His insights into improvised weaponry and adaptive techniques were being incorporated into Academy curriculum, and Hana had become something of a legend. Not because students feared her, but because they respected what she represented. She was proof that the galaxy's understanding of strength and weakness needed to be completely reconsidered. The Academy's administration had quietly begun reaching out to Earth's government, requesting permission to recruit more human students. The response had been cautiously positive, but with conditions that surprised the aliens. They want psychological evaluations for all human applicants, Commandant Zorthak explained to his staff. They want to make sure we are not training people who might misuse their abilities. Senior Instructor Valmir found this fascinating. They are concerned about their own people becoming too dangerous? Apparently, Zorthak confirmed. Human leadership understands better than we do what their species is capable of. They want to make sure we only train individuals who will use their skills responsibly. The most dramatic change, however, was in Vextar himself. The arrogant instructor who had once mocked human weakness was gone. In his place was someone who approached teaching with new humility and wisdom. His first class after returning to duty was memorable. As students filed into the training hall, they noticed that Hana was present as his assistant instructor. Many aliens were visibly nervous. Today we discuss the difference between strength and power, Vextar began. I once believed these were the same thing. I was wrong. He gestured to Hana, who stood quietly beside him. Power is the ability to impose your will through force. Strength is the ability to choose when and how to use that power. True warriors possess both, but strength without wisdom is merely violence. The lesson that followed was unlike anything the Academy had seen before. Instead of demonstrations of dominance, Vextar taught about restraint. Instead of showing how to overpower opponents, he showed how to control encounters without unnecessary harm. The most dangerous beings in the galaxy, he concluded, are those who look harmless because they choose to be. They are dangerous not because they want to hurt others, but because they can choose not to. After class, a new student, a young Krulon named Dextar, approached nervously. Instructor, are humans really as dangerous as everyone says? Vextar looked over at Hana, who was helping other students with their technique. She was patient and gentle, offering encouragement and careful correction. It was hard to believe this was the same person who had nearly killed him weeks earlier. Humans, Vextar said thoughtfully, are exactly as dangerous as they need to be. No more, no less. That is what makes them truly frightening and truly valuable as allies. Months later, when new alien cadets arrived at the Academy, they received a very different orientation than previous classes. Instead of being told about the various species and their capabilities, they were given a single simple rule. Respect is earned through restraint, not strength. The most dangerous beings in this galaxy are those who choose not to show their true capabilities. Many of the new students did not understand this warning at first. They looked at the small, quiet humans walking through the halls and wondered what all the fuss was about. But the returning students knew better. They had learned that on a distant blue world called Earth, evolution had created something unique, apex predators who had learned to disguise their nature behind kind smiles and gentle words. And they had learned that sometimes, in very rare circumstances, those predators chose to remind the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. The lesson lasted exactly 30 seconds, but its effects would reshape galactic understanding for generations to come. In her quiet moments, Hana often thought about the wooden carving she had given Vextar. Like the oak trees of Earth, the strongest things in the universe were those that could bend without breaking, endure without surrendering, and choose mercy even when they possessed the power to destroy. These were the lessons that Earth had taught its children, and now slowly but surely, the galaxy was learning them too.